Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Versus Stars podcast. How are my loyal listeners? Thank you for your continued support. And remember, click that subscribe button, everybody. This is a very special episode because Alex Proyas boards the mothership. You know him as the director of The Crow and Dark City. He is now producing Dark Sister. Come on board as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Proyas. Thank you so much for coming to the Versus Stars podcast.
Hey, how are you? Nice to talk to you.
It's a deep honor to speak with you. You've made two of my favorite movies of all time, The Crow and Dark City, and it's like I said, a deep honor to have you on the show.
Great, fantastic. Ask away.
So we start off with a question of inspiration. What inspired your love of film, and who are your earliest influences?
Look, Stanley Kubrick, of course, is one of my greatest influences. It continues to be to this day. We put a deck together recently for a project that we're trying to sell to distributors, and one of the images that I had, the comps, you're supposed to do what's called comps now, which I always find really peculiar because I always think of not comparing my movie to other movies because, to me, originality is king, right?
Yep.
But unfortunately, no one else in Hollywood thinks that way. So I had an image out of Clockwork Orange, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. So Kubrick, Tarkovsky, Buñuel, and Hitchcock are my holy quadruple people, not Trinity, because there's four of them. So
right. So
look, I love all. I mean, I love a lot of disparate films and filmmakers, but in terms of their ongoing influence, their whole oeuvre of work, it's definitely those four that I think have really inspired me over the years.
Now, is it in how they develop their atmosphere? Is it how they work with the actors? Is it something else that drives you the most towards those movies?
It's everything. And, when I go back and look at those films, which I do every few years, I've just recently gone through the Kubrick films again. I see new things about them because I, of course, change. The films don't. I change. And I see a whole different perspective to them. And there's something about them that I hadn't really noticed before. The thing that came out of Kubrick's work recently was just how funny it is. A lot of his films are really quite comedic in a very dry kind of way, but very dry sort of British, almost Australian way, in fact, not the sort of kind of humor that a lot of Americans instantly get. But that really struck me. It's something that I was aware of it, of course, but it struck me anew as I watched his films again, particularly Barry Lyndon, which doesn't seem to be a comedic film on the outside, but it's pretty broadly satirical, in fact. And it's, even the central character, the title character is kind of somewhat humorous in his approach to life. And I think that's one of the great joys of that film.
Well, you're now the head of what's called the Heretic Foundation. What inspired the creation of this company, and what is the company's vision?
Well, Heretic Foundation is a visual effects company, effectively, but it's been built in a way to service a sort of new methodology of filmmaking. So virtual production, which you may or may not know something of, it's basically a way of creating environments without building sets or traveling to locations, using visual effects, using LED volumes and green screen as well. So I've used that to build this company off the back of, because for me and for many other filmmakers at the moment, the model of production really doesn't work for us. It doesn't work for the creatives in this industry anymore. It's doubtful that it ever really did. But for the kind of films that I like to make, which is original fantasy, science fiction, world-building films, they are naturally expensive films to make. And they've very much fallen out of favor at the box office for whatever reason, and therefore fallen out of favor with studios and financiers as well. And so I realized that I had to lower the cost of production, and virtual production became a method of doing that through the creation of Heretic Foundation, which is a kind of all-encompassing production model. that, as I say, uses virtual production as a way to supercharge creativity and lower the overheads of film production.
So how does one lower the cost of production and still maintain the quality of production?
By being very, very smart and clever, and designing a methodology that is completely non-linear, but allows you, but gives you the greatest flexibility of control for a director, but is expedient, is lean and efficient. As Australians, we're very good at doing this. I've done it on all my films anyway, with the old production model. A film like Dark City that I made many years ago, which we made for around $25 million at the time. I mean, people were looking at the film going, how did you make it for such a small budget? Which was, in those days, for such a big movie, was a very small budget, we built all the sets full scale, and there was a lot of complexity. Well, it was from being clever. Terry Gilliam gave me a great insight at one stage. Terry, who I know, we've gotten together over the years a couple of times, and he told me this story about when he was making Brazil, how he would walk around the art department, and if someone was painting the back of a door that he would never see, he'd tell them to stop, because he felt like that paint and that guy's effort of painting the door would be best used somewhere else, so that it would end up on screen, And that's really a great little insight into how to run a production really efficiently. That requires a filmmaker, a director, with a really clear vision of what they want to see, right? Not every director is like that. I hope that I am like that. I certainly try to be that way. I'm very specific with what I want. And I know when I've got it, and I don't do endless takes, etc., etc. So I'm really clear on the parameters of what I want, and I believe that cuts out a hell of a lot of wastage that occurs in films. When you're given $100 million plus budget, wastage is almost built in. I was having arguments with 20th Century Fox when I was making iRobot over the fact that they were not letting me proceed with decisions that were going to end up costing my production money. I saw it from my own personal point of view. I didn't want to spend any more dollars than was absolutely necessary to get it right, because it was more dollars that my film had to make back at the box office to make those guys happy, and the general consensus accept that I can make a movie profitable, which would allow me to make the next movie. So it's a very simple rationale, But it seems that Hollywood itself, the studios, the people spending the money, sometimes don't follow that rule, and it's an essential rule. So with Heretic, I've built a methodology where we absolutely subscribe to that way of making films, and it's working. It's really amazing how much we're able to lower the threshold of budgets and create amazing environments, amazing situations, and settings. And people ask me what is the percentage difference. And it's very hard to quantify, because it depends on the production, of course, and exactly what you're doing. Some scenes lend themselves more easily. Some scenes are more difficult to achieve, etc. We also do traditional VFX as well, and those aren't necessarily that impacted by this. It still requires people sitting down and, doing stuff on a computer screen. So that is what it is, It can be expedited a little bit, but the actual on-set photography, both in time and budget, are hugely impacted, because it means you don't have to, even if you're shooting something in the so-called real world, in the contemporary world, but you need to travel your unit from point A to point B to point C in a day, you can shoot it all on the one stage, but you press a button and you've got your new environment. You can walk away with dailies. You're not doing comp work, compositing work later on. And you can work with much smaller crews, and you can work much faster. So that seriously impacts the budget, really does bring it within. I mean, it's really the difference between shooting a indie movie on location or shooting that same story, same number of characters, etc., on Mars. It's almost that paradigm. So we know what the Martian one would cost, which is minimum 40, 50, 60 million dollars. And we know what the Indie one would cost, which is maybe $5 or $6 million. So, you work out the difference right there, and it's quite a substantial one.
Now, I mean, just by a question of efficiency, when you are shooting on location, you have many different issues, lighting, other weather conditions, things of that nature, people as well. How does digital production solve those problems without and still maintain, once again, the look of the true location?
Well, I mean, look, that's a complex question you've asked. To answer the last part first, there are many ways you can create your environment. You can photograph it if you want to. If you want it to look, if you don't want to have any disputes about what reality looks like, you go and you shoot it, and you shoot it, or you scan it. So you can still move around that environment. If you're doing a scene in, say, in the desert at dusk and you need the whole scene to be at magic hour, right? Well, this is a beautiful thing because you go and you scan it at magic hour, you scan the actual location, you bring that back into the studio, and you can shoot that scene for 2 or 3 days, and it's always going to look the background is going to look exactly the same, the lighting is going to look exactly the same on the actors. You get a little wind machine on there and suddenly their hair's moving around, and it's completely 100% realistic. And I defy anyone to look at some of these scenes and, if they didn't know, pick them as anything other than 100% reality. Okay, so that's the starting point, and then the logistics of that is what I've just described, which is you have something in magic hour, you have something in a location which is difficult to access. I've shot in like big public locations where we needed full control of the location, which the owners of the location were happy to grant us, but they would say, like, I shot in a scene in a museum, right? So they said, fine, come on in, but you've got to start shooting when everyone goes home, and you've got to work through the night, and then you've got to be finished by the time our customers start coming in, so we're locked into that little very short window. We've got to run in, light it, and do all our scenes. Fine, that's good enough, and get out of there, move everything out before 8 a.m. or whatever it is the visitors start arriving. Again, that's a perfect scenario for go and get permission to scan the environment, scan it with the people already there. You can digitally remove the people, the visitors. So you don't, you don't really need to light these days. You can scan it at a resolution where it's already lit, and away you go. You can take 3 or 4 days to shoot your scene in a studio, where you have full control. It's never going to rain on you. It's never going to wash your set away in a storm. It's going to be, if you want a snow scene, you don't have to work with your actors in the freezing cold. If you want to shoot in the desert, you don't have to work with your actors when it's 50 degrees Celsius and they're going to start dropping like flies. So again, it's like there is no better model to work. And then from my point of view, you have that additional advantage, which is, what if you don't want to be in the real world? What if you know what you want this world to look like? Again, you can use elements of the real world. You can scan rocks and environments, etc., but then recreate them in a computer and make them something that isn't the real world. Put another planet in the sky, floating in the sky, and then you're on another planet or whatever. And then even for like big sets, like a big castle or a mansion, we're doing a scene in a sort of 18th century mansion at the moment, and it's all on a screen and you can't tell the difference. And it's literally like, to get the rights to shoot in a mansion is expensive, and we'd have to fly to another country to do it, because we don't have a lot of mansions of that style here in Sydney. We'd have to fly to the UK. So again, I'm doing a car chase in a film that's set in London in 1930, and we're building it all. We're building London, Tower Bridge and all this sort of stuff. There's a scene on Tower Bridge. We're building it all. I mean, and all this stuff is like, it's nothing new because people have been doing this in movies forever, but now we can do it so that it is 100% real, right?
Mm.
And we can do it more cheaply to achieve that 100% reality. So that's
I had the pleasure of watching a clip of Dark Sister, which my understanding is it a campaign right now on IndieGoGo. So listeners, go to IndieGoGo and make sure you fund the campaign. But it's also a proof of concept of the Heretic Foundation. So why was Dark Sister a great example of what the Heretic Foundation can accomplish?
Well, look, we've actually made a bunch of films already, and we've actually just finished a feature film that wasn't. I was just a producer. I wasn't a director. I say just a producer. Producers work hard too, but anyway, I wasn't the director of the film. Heretic Foundation did all the virtual production, and it's fully virtual. It's the first movie shot in Australia, feature-length film that's entirely virtual. And it's kind of like Spielberg's Duel, but at night. And it's a guy in a truck, and he goes through these different situations, etc. So when it comes to Dark Sister specifically, that's one of the films that we've been making in order to shake out our abilities, our techniques, to refine our techniques. This is one which I directed myself. I'm directing myself. We still haven't completed the film, and as you say, we're looking for people to help us complete the film, because it's cheaper than usual, but it still costs money, which we don't have, obviously. So anyone that can help would be great. And this is an entire world that's been created. It's a 1920s aristocratic UK situation with a mansion, and then a crumbling haunted house, and then a spooky forest. It's a fairly contained set of environments, but we've created them all with virtual production. We've shot the entire film. Every single shot in the film is shot on green screen. We built no sets at all. And there's a shot where you fly over the cliffs of Dover, and you fly up to a 1920s Bentley limousine driving along the cliff, and you zoom into the lady of the mansion's face as she says something. There's no cliffs, there's no ocean, there's no car. The car doesn't exist. Even the interior of the car has been created from scratch. Why? Because we couldn't afford anything. So we decided to create everything and just see how far we could push it. So people see that scene and they kind of go, okay, well, look, we know there's something virtual going on, but surely you just got a car and you're using the interior, and what's outside the windows is the virtual part. No, everything is virtual. The seats the actors are sitting in, the windows, even the steering wheel that the chauffeur is using is completely virtual. If we couldn't get a steering, we couldn't afford a steering wheel of a 20th century. So it just shows how far you can take this stuff,
Well, I was going to say, when having, like I said, the pleasure of watching the trailer, which is when you go to the campaigns for the listeners, you can see clips from the film Dark Sister. I couldn't tell the difference between what I saw and what was real. I assumed the car was real. I assumed that was all real stuff. I could not tell that was digital. And I after you tell me, I'm thinking back, it's like, no, I honestly, God, did not see it.
It's one of those things. It's like, it kind of breaks my heart to tell people before they've seen the film, because then everyone's sitting there going, I don't believe it, as soon as they know. And I know from showing people who don't know, who have no idea, I tell them nothing, they totally buy it. They don't even think about it. All they care about is the actors, and they can see they're in these beautiful, sumptuous locations, and they just assume we've built a set or we've gone to some mansion or something like that. I mean, that's the beauty of this technology, is it's that suspension of disbelief that films have anyway. Audiences, unless I've noticed over the years, unless you bring an audience in and you break that agreement that you make, we all agree, we shake hands before the movie starts, that the audience are going to suspend the disbelief and not pretend that, not acknowledge that they're actors in costumes on a set, right?
Right.
They try and believe in the story and the people on screen as a reality. Okay, so that's visual effects for you. Is when you create these worlds, as long as you make that agreement up front and say, this is where it is, this is the style of the film, the audience just go with it, and even film savvy audiences go with it. as long as you don't break that promise,
Well, speaking of the story, so the story of Dark Sister is described as a gothic horror ghost tale. So is the greater horror the ghost or the one who's behind the murder 13 years earlier?
It's that, well, you sort of need to see the movie and the film, and it happens that the resolution that is at the end of the film. Of course, it's a bit of a surprise what happens, but it's of course we immediately give away the whole plot of the film by saying that this girl is a ghost that she's encountered. You don't know at first. She doesn't know at first, and she believes that the girl is playing tricks on her and lying to her. But the girl happens to be an identical twin to her, the girl that she finds in the forest. And that's the other part of the visual effects that, again, people also take that for granted, which is, we had amazing complexity in creating these two actors, the same actress play both roles, and people, again, take that for granted. But that's another trick that I think we've achieved pretty well. And, again, in terms of expediting this process, making it lean and efficient, I've worked many times on with very high-end motion control gear, which is basically a way to get a camera, do a move with a camera, and then have that camera be able to repeat it. It's programmed in a computer and it repeats. And that's the best way to achieve when an actor's playing two roles and you want a camera moving, that's really the best and probably one of the only ways of achieving that effect, right? Well, we couldn't afford an expensive motion control unit. So I just went, you know what, we're going to do it by eye. I'm going to have a monitor on set. We're going to have a camera on a dolly. The cameraman, because we couldn't afford a grip either, so the camera operator was pushing the camera, and I was talking them through at what point I wanted the camera to move, and somehow we managed to make it work. We slid it around a little bit in post-production, etc. But again, that's another great way of, if you know what you're doing, and more importantly, if you're crazy enough not to use the expensive toys because you just can't afford them, it's amazing what you can achieve. It's the ultimate low budget can-do sort of movie-making style,
So the main protagonist is a woman named Alice, who is entering, is it basically a haunted house? So how difficult was it to construct the haunted house or the location digital, and how did that impact the performance?
Well, firstly, the actors are always working on green. There literally is nothing else. There's a scene when they're at in a dining room with this massively long dining table, and the husband's on one end and the wife's on the other end. Well, we couldn't afford a table, so there is no table. Literally, we had little bits of green for them to put the cups and saucers on that they were drinking from, and everything else has been created. The only thing that was real was the chair. So when our Alice walks into this haunted house, which is a ruin, it was burnt out long ago. There's nothing there. She walks up some steps at one stage. Well, we had some green steps that she could walk up, and that's really it. So the actors got used to it after a while. It's always a challenge, but some actors use their imagination. They're like big kids. That's one of the tools of the trade, and so the good ones are like that. The bad ones really are like kids, and you have to treat them as such, as a director. But they're used to using their imagination, and as long as you talk them through the world, and of course the advantage we have is we can show them on our monitors on set what they're walking through. So we can even do a take and have them come over and look at it, and they can respond to that and go, oh, okay, so that's where the stairs are, and that's where the doorway is, and yeah, God, it looks spooky, and there's a full moon in the sky coming through the broken roof of the house and beams of light coming down. So they get to see the atmospheric. So then I have to spend less time describing, putting them in the mood, so to speak, So that's pretty much the way we did the that sequence in the film.
Now, the thing with crowdfunding is there's often rewards for backers of the project. So what are some of the rewards backers can look forward to who back Dark Sister?
Well, we've actually already gone for it with this, and this is an experiment. I've never tried to do crowdfunding before, and so it's a bold experiment for us to see whether it was going to work. And we've learned a lot already from the campaign, and maybe what we would do differently next time. But we definitely jumped in the deep end with what the rewards are for people who are contributing. They start off very humble, and there's posters and subscriptions to this platform called Vidiverse, which is a short film platform that we've also set up in the last year or two. And then eventually down the track, I mean, you have to contribute a considerable amount to do this. We give credits, not just thank yous. Thank yous are pretty low down in the pecking order of rewards. We give associate producer, we give co-producer, and we give executive producer, and that's the order of hierarchy in films. Not going to give producer, of course, because producer is the top echelon, and that's kind of me. And no amount of money can really buy one of those on the short. But I think it's a meaningful credit to give, because it's giving value, not just, you get to see a film. If you get a credit on this film, and look, I personally, in my humble way, believe this film's going to be great. I mean, I really think it's looking amazing. I think it's going to get, the one we made just before this one called Mask of the Evil Apparition did huge on the short film festival circuit, which is the highest acclaim that really a short can have. There's no commercial success a short can have. It was incredibly well reviewed, etc. I fully expect, and I'd be very disappointed if this one didn't get similar or greater response. So anyone with a credit, a proper, on-screen credit, like a producer type credit, I believe it's a meaningful gesture, and I believe that a lot of people will see that name and they don't need to know that they basically bought the credit for a few measly $100. But anyway, I'm happy to give it out, because I think it's one of the few things we can offer, that I believe are meaningful in these circumstances.
So, through what dates is the campaign active for?
Sorry, say that again.
Through which dates is the campaign active for?
We're about halfway through, and I believe there's another 2 weeks, maybe something
2
like
weeks?
that. Yeah.
So, and how soon after the campaign is over does the film complete shooting?
The film has actually finished shooting. We're completely done. Yeah, this is all now for post-production. It's literally all for VFX work. So that's all been. I've already spent a considerable amount of my own money filming, and paying the crew and the cast and etc. And now we just need to get it over the line, get it done. So. And
where will our listeners be able to watch the short when it's complete?
The short will go to festivals around the world probably first, because some of the really important ones are like premiere, so we'll probably hit those first, and then after it's done a good bit of its festival run and hopefully picked up many awards, we will be showing it on Vidiverse.com, which is the short film streamer.
Well, like I said, when I saw it, it looks amazing. And once again, you're one of my favorite directors of all time. So I want to thank you so much. And I hope our listeners find Dark Sister on IndieGoGo and pledge what they can. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. It was lovely talking to you. And thank you for your support and consideration.
Like I said, I hope you guys do.
Cheers.